I remember the first time I saw the blood moon rising over the horizon, a gruesome, ruddy orb that bled its light across a land that already seemed soaked in despair. It was the night that would shatter every illusion of safety I had clung to in my life. I'm not a man prone to superstitions, but that night, I was forced to confront forces that defied all rational explanation. I had come to the small, isolated town of Alder's Hollow seeking solace after years of wandering, running from the ghosts of my past. The town lay nestled between dense woods and steep hills, where whispers of ancient curses and lost souls were woven into the fabric of everyday conversation. They spoke of a curse triggered by the blood moon, a night when the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred and ancient grudges were resurrected to exact their terrible vengeance. I arrived on a chill autumn evening, the sky already bruised with the hint of that ominous lunar glow. The locals eyed me with a mix of pity and silent warning, as if I were an intruder in a place that had seen too many tragedies. I checked into a creaking inn on the edge of town, where the floors groaned beneath my every step and the wallpaper peeled like old scabs. I couldn't help but feel that something malevolent lurked in every shadow. That first night, sleep was a distant memory. I lay awake listening to the wind as it rustled through skeletal trees outside my window, a mournful sound that seemed to echo the voices of those long dead. I recalled the warnings I had heard during my travels, a local legend of the blood moon's curse. They said that every century, when the moon turned a deep, unsettling red, an ancient spirit awoke, seeking vengeance for a forgotten sin. I dismissed these stories as the ramblings of a superstitious folk, yet as the night deepened, an unsettling sensation crawled along my skin. I remember the moment of dread so vividly. The clock struck midnight, and the full, blood-colored moon ascended in the sky, its light turning the inn's hallways into ghostly corridors. A strange energy rippled through the air, and I felt as if every molecule of my being was under attack. Then came the first sign, a low, mournful moan that echoed through the empty halls, as though the very walls were crying out in agony. I rose from my bed, heart pounding, and crept to the window. Outside, the world was transformed. The night was bathed in an eerie glow, and the once familiar landscape now looked like the setting of a nightmare. Over the following hours, the quiet of Alder's Hollow shattered. I emerged into a chaos of inexplicable events, townspeople wandering aimlessly, eyes glazed with terror, and violent spectral figures emerging from the shadows. It began with a man I once knew, his face contorted in an expression of pure anguish. He approached me, his voice a ragged whisper. "The curse, it's real. Run, before it claims you." But before I could react, his body convulsed and he collapsed to the ground as if crushed by an invisible force. In the days that followed, I found myself at the center of a living nightmare. The blood moon's curse was not an abstract legend. It was a brutal reality, a force that turned friends into foes and neighbors into monsters. I soon learned that the curse was tied to an ancient betrayal. Generations ago, Alder's Hollow had been the site of a vicious conflict between a coven of outcasts and a powerful, repressive authority. The outcasts were executed in a brutal purge under the light of a blood moon, their souls cursing the town as they passed from this world to the next. Their vengeance was now being exacted upon any who dwelled in the cursed town. I tried to escape, to flee into the surrounding woods, but the land itself seemed to conspire against me. Paths twisted into labyrinths, and every attempt to leave was thwarted by a palpable sense of dread, as if unseen hands were guiding me back into the heart of the horror. I encountered others along the way, a grieving widow searching for her missing child, a bitter old man who muttered about lost honor and retribution, and together we attempted to decipher the curse's origins. We discovered that the curse was intrinsically tied to the blood moon itself. With every cycle, the spectral forces grew stronger, feeding on the pain and terror of the living, ensuring that the blood moon cycle would be one of relentless violence and despair. I became obsessed with uncovering the truth behind this ancient malediction. Every scrap of local lore, every whispered story of the past, led me deeper into a labyrinth of historical grudges and spectral retribution. I pored over brittle manuscripts in the town's dusty library, learning that the curse was enacted by a vengeful spirit known as Ilarion, a once powerful shaman wronged by the town's founders. His fury had been so profound that it transcended death, and now every blood moon, his spirit returned to settle scores that were centuries old. The more I learned, the more the veil between sanity and madness began to fray. I started experiencing disturbing visions, flashes of a past long buried, a cauldron of wrath, ritualistic sacrifice, and the blood of innocents spilled beneath that same red moon. I saw Ilarion's face, twisted in a sorrowful rage, his eyes burning with an unquenchable fire. I witnessed the final moments of the outcasts, their screams echoing in a timeless void. Each vision was a harbinger of the violence that was to come, a relentless tide that swallowed hope. As the nights grew longer and the blood moon's influence deepened, the supernatural events escalated into acts of unimaginable cruelty. I found myself hunted by phantasmal forms that emerged from the darkness, spectral figures that moved with a malevolent grace, their eyes voids of endless despair. In one harrowing encounter, I took refuge in an old chapel on the outskirts of town. The building was a crumbling relic, its stained glass windows shattered and its altar defiled by years of neglect. I believed the sanctity of the chapel might offer me protection, yet even within its walls the curse found a way to seep in. That night, as I huddled in the shadow of the altar, I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly and saw a figure draped in tattered robes, its face obscured by a hood, its hand outstretched as if beckoning me to join it in eternal torment. The figure's voice was both seductive and horrifyingly hollow. "Join us, and let the blood moon wash away your sins." But as quickly as it appeared, it dissolved into a swirl of crimson mist that filled the chapel, leaving me gasping in a suffocating silence. I realized then that there was no sanctuary from this relentless terror. Desperation drove me to seek the counsel of an elderly woman known simply as Mara, a reclusive figure rumored to be a keeper of ancient lore. In the dim light of her candlelit parlor, surrounded by relics and grim talismans, Mara spoke in hushed tones of the curse's nature. "The blood moon's vengeance is not merely an act of retribution," she intoned. "It is a force of nature, a purge of all that is weak and corrupt. It thrives on despair and the sins of the past, and no mortal soul can escape its judgment." Her eyes, reflecting years of sorrow, held mine as she continued. "To defy it is to invite destruction upon yourself and all those you love." I clung to her words like a lifeline, yet every moment I spent with Mara deepened my understanding of the curse's inescapability. There was no path to redemption, no ritual to appease the vengeful spirit. The curse was a cycle destined to repeat, consuming every hope and every life it touched. The blood moon had already marked the town, and now, inevitably, it was turning its wrath upon me. I tried to fight back, to use the knowledge I had gathered to break the curse. I spent days poring over ancient texts, performing makeshift rituals in desperate hope of reversing the tide of violence. But the more I struggled, the more the curse tightened its grip on my soul. Night after night, I was tormented by dreams of burning villages, spectral armies, and my own blood painting the cobblestones of a town I once thought could be saved. I saw friends and strangers alike succumb to an unstoppable madness, their screams mingling with the howling winds under that monstrous red moon. One fateful evening, as the blood moon reached its zenith, I decided to confront the source of this ancient hatred. Armed with nothing more than a meager collection of talismans and a heart burdened with despair, I made my way to the ruins at the edge of the forest, a site where Ilarion was said to have performed his final, cursed rites. The journey was perilous. The forest was alive with shadows that moved with a will of their own, branches twisting into claw-like shapes that seemed determined to drag me into oblivion. The ground beneath my feet was slick with decay, and every rustle of leaves echoed like a death knell. At the ruins, I found remnants of stone altars and crumbling statues, their features eroded by time yet still exuding an aura of dread. The air was thick with the stench of old blood and burnt offerings. As I stepped into the center of the ancient clearing, the moon overhead pulsed with an unholy rhythm. I felt a deep, resonant vibration in my bones, as though the very earth were mourning the sins of the past. It was then that I saw him, Ilarion, or rather, the spectral remnant of his fury. He materialized before me in a swirl of crimson and shadow, his form both majestic and terrifying. His eyes were pits of darkness, and his voice carried the weight of centuries of suffering. "You dare to challenge my legacy?" he thundered, his tone laced with venom and sorrow. "Your soul is already tainted by the sins of this cursed land." In that moment, all the fear and determination in me coalesced into a single desperate act of defiance. I raised my trembling hands, clutching the talismans that I believed might somehow bind his power. I recited the incantations I had so painstakingly memorized, each word a plea for deliverance. The air around me shimmered, charged with an energy that bordered on the divine. But as the final syllable left my lips, I felt a searing pain rip through my chest, a pain that was both physical and spiritual. It was as if Ilarion's very essence had been injected into my veins, and I could feel my life force draining away. Ilarion's laugh echoed in the clearing, a sound that was both mocking and mournful. "Your defiance is meaningless," he intoned. "The blood moon claims all, and you are now part of its eternal requiem." In that instant, the ground beneath me erupted in a torrent of spectral energy. Visions of past atrocities, of lives ended in vain, and of a curse that had ravaged generations cascaded through my mind. I felt my identity splintering, each fragment consumed by the relentless, vengeful force of the blood moon. I collapsed among the ruins, the talismans slipping from my grasp as darkness began to close in around me. I remember the taste of iron on my tongue, the metallic tang of blood mingling with the tears I could no longer control. The last thing I saw before the darkness claimed me was the red orb of the blood moon pulsing ominously above, a silent, unyielding witness to my downfall. When I awoke, or rather, when I found myself in a state that could barely be called waking, I was no longer the man who had arrived in Alder's Hollow seeking redemption. I was a vessel for the curse, an unwilling participant in a cycle of vengeance that spanned centuries. My eyes, once clear and hopeful, were now dull and haunted, reflecting the horror of every life I had witnessed fall to the blood moon's wrath. I wandered the ruined streets of the town, my presence a harbinger of doom. Where I went, despair followed. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers would cross my path, their eyes widening in terror as they recognized the cursed mark upon my soul. In those final days, I tried in vain to warn others, to break the cycle by sharing the truth of what I had seen, but my words fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the cacophony of screams and the relentless pounding of spectral fury. Alder's Hollow became a ghost town overnight, a desolate landscape where the living was swallowed by an endless tide of terror. I became both a martyr and a monster, trapped in a state of perpetual torment as the blood moon continued its grim descent across the sky. I write these words now not in the hope of redemption, but as a testament to the futility of resisting an ancient curse. Every night, as the blood moon ascends once more, I feel its malevolent gaze upon me, a constant reminder that some sins are too deep to be cleansed, and some curses too potent to be undone. I have become a part of Alder's Hollow's dark legacy, a living warning to any who dare to challenge the inexorable forces of the supernatural. I have seen the true face of vengeance, and it is not the deliverance of justice, but the cruel, unyielding march of despair. The blood moon's glow is a beacon for those lost in darkness, a reminder that no matter how desperately one may seek escape, the shadows of the past will always reach out to claim what is theirs. And so, as I sit here in the perpetual twilight of a cursed existence, I know that there is no salvation, no happy ending to be found in this endless cycle of blood and sorrow. The curse has consumed me, as it has consumed so many before me. I am but another soul ensnared in its merciless grip, a reluctant herald of a terror that shows no mercy. And with each passing night, as the blood moon rises and the sky burns red, I am reminded that vengeance is a bitter, unquenchable fire, one that leaves nothing but charred remnants in its wake. There is no escape from the fate that has been sealed beneath that bloody celestial eye. I have become the embodiment of Alder's Hollow's darkest hour, a living testament to the destructive power of ancient grudges and supernatural malice. And now, as the final vestiges of my humanity slip away into the shadows, I surrender to the inevitable truth that under the vengeful glow of the blood moon, all hope is devoured, and all souls are destined to perish in the unending night. I offer no solace, no comforting epilogue, only the stark reality of my own descent into oblivion. The blood moon's vengeance is absolute, and as its crimson light eclipses the remnants of my fading self, I become one with the curse, a final, irrevocable surrender to the darkness that knows no end. I write this now, in the dim afterglow of another cursed night, knowing that soon the blood moon will rise again. The cycle is unbroken, and I am doomed to wander the remnants of this forsaken place, a harbinger of despair in a world where vengeance reigns supreme. May these words serve as a warning. There is no salvation under the blood moon, only the relentless march of retribution and the inevitability of a bitter, hopeless end. In the end, the story of Alder's Hollow is not one of redemption, but of ruin, a tale of how the sins of the past can awaken forces that even time cannot silence. The blood moon's curse has no mercy, no reprieve. It is a perpetual storm of supernatural fury, a testament to the fact that some evils are eternal. And so I remain, a broken man, forever haunted by the vengeance of the blood moon, with no promise of light at the end of this endless, blood-soaked night.